Scheduled the reading, but that's because I'm a theater person, so I had no idea. My name is Danielle Wersansky, and on behalf of the Rosenstrasse Foundation and the Rosenstrasse Civil Courage Foundation, I want to really warmly welcome you to today's reading of Mela. This event is part of the Foundation's broader mission to commemorate and encourage and educate about civil courage. And civil courage that's really the moments when ordinary people take extraordinary risks to oppose injustice and to defend the values of a pluralistic society. The Rosenstrasse Civil Courage Foundation takes its name from the Rosenstrasse protest of early 1943 in Berlin, where non-Jewish women who were married to Jewish men publicly protested against the deportation of their husbands. This was the only protest against the deportation of the Jews in Nazi Germany. Against all expectations, the protest succeeded and the men were released. So central to the Foundation's work is the idea that meaningful resistance does not always come from people in positions of power, but from everyday civilians that are willing to act when formal protections fail. So Mela very powerfully reflects the same theme. It tells the true story of Amelia Mela Roslin, who was a Polish woman who risked her life to rescue Jewish children from the Warsaw Ghetto. So while her husband Alex was busy gathering resources, Mela guarded the household, protecting both the hidden children and her own. For me, her story reminds us that resistance often looks like that: persistence, vigilance, and care, carried out day after day under terrifying conditions. So before we begin the reading, I also want to acknowledge the playwright Michael Halperin, whose work spans theater and television and literature, and whose writing is grounded in survivor testimony and historical research. So his newest book, which I have right here, is called Out of the Storm: Holocaust to Hope. And it continues this exploration of resilience and moral courage, and we're really grateful to be able to highlight it today. And at the conclusion of the reading, if anyone is interested in purchasing a copy, I have a coupon code because this book is new and just came out. So today's reading is going to be performed by Reid, Vinayrd, an award-winning director and theater artist whose work does include Holocaust education and memory-focused performance. And we're really thankful for her generosity and care in bringing Mela's stories to life. And we also want to have a special thank to Hope Theater and Jeff Mandel, for reading stage directions and being a part of this production. So thank you all for being here and in supporting this work, and for helping ensure that the stories of rescue, resistance, and civil courage remain part of our shared public memory, especially today. So without further ado, Mela, thank you.
Mela, written by Michael Halperin, a true story of incredible bravery. Dedicated to the memory of Amelia Mela Roslin, 1907 to 1996. Inspired by the true story of Amelia Mela Roslin, who, along with her husband Alex, rescued 3 Jewish children, Jacob, Shalom, and David Gutgeld, from the Warsaw Ghetto. While Alex gathered resources to feed and clothe the family, Mela guarded the household, protecting the boys as well as her own children. Shalom died as a result of rampant disease in war-torn Warsaw. She stood against incursions from spying neighbors, Polish collaborators, the Gestapo, and the infamous SS. Her strength held the family together from 1941 until Jacob and David were repatriated with their father, living in the British Mandate, Palestine. This is her story. Mela and Alex Roslin were honored at Yad Vashem in Israel and at the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles, California. Their oral histories, archived at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum and the Shoah Foundation, University of Southern California. spotlight focuses on an actor seated at a table with a mirror, gray wig on a counter, apron thrown over a chair. She touches up her face, adds wrinkles, turns down stage.
If you're searching for entertainment, a few laughs, they're here, along with an incredible tale of heroism under the most trying of times. It's a journey into the heart, in many ways, a love story. The set is a cottage in Tampa, 1981. It belongs to the Roslins, ordinary people who did the extraordinary.
Puts on wig and apron.
My name is Mela Roslin.
She exits, lights up on a cottage kitchen, table with a sack of flour, eggs, and a mixing bowl.
Alex, please, don't feed the rabbits. They'll eat all our flowers. Yes, I know I can plant more, but you don't have to encourage them.
Mela enters.
Why do I bother? He always does what he wants. And still, I haven't learned after 60 years.
Mela opens a package of flour, pours it into a mixing bowl, stirring vigorously.
These years haven't always been easy. We arrived in America after the war. Neither of us spoke a word of English. Alex worked as a janitor in an office building. We learned the language. I mean, what else could we do? You have to buy food, English. Buy a house, English. Our daughter, Mauricia, picked it up in no time and insisted that we speak like Americans. It didn't work so well. The words were American, but the accent, Polish. A year later, Alex became the head of maintenance, and 2 years later, he started a small company and built a large home for us on Long Island. The American success story, a new life that I never imagined. It didn't erase the past that I live with. Part of my life seems so real. Even today, I imagine looking out the windows of Warsaw in our small apartment. I still see the peaceful Wisła River and its old stone and iron bridges. And over there, Zamek, the royal castle where kings of Poland once lived. During spring and summer, Alex and I walked the beautiful gardens of Belvedere Palace. Most of the time, we lived a quiet life in a quiet neighborhood. Alex sold fabric remnants in our little shop. We didn't make a lot of money, but we had enough. The rest of Europe, it wasn't so peaceful. Newspapers ran stories every day about Hitler and his National Socialist Party, the Nazis. Every time he invaded another country, he announced it was for peace. There was this joke. What he really meant by peace was a piece of France, a piece of Czechoslovakia, a piece of Hungary. Right out of that movie, The Producers. Nazis despised anyone who didn't live up to that Aryan ideal. To them, the Slavs, Gypsies, Jews, everyone but Germans were not Aryan. Blonde hair, blue eyes. We looked at their leader, the Fuhrer, their Hitler, a short man with a withered arm, dark hair, dark eyes, and an Austrian. It didn't make any difference to a nation gone mad. It had little impact on my family or me because our government assured us Germany and Russia would leave us in peace.
Sound. The low whistle of an aerial bomb stretches out interminably, and explosion. Light flashes through the window. Sound of machine gun fire. Sound of boots marching in unison. The window reflects flashes of bombs. Sound of battle continues for a few moments.
When the Germans came for us, their search for peace, we soon discovered their promises stood for nothing.
Bombs bursting, marching troops. A series of pictures. Nazi war machine projected on wall. Jews humiliated by the Nazis. A loudspeaker.
1939. Our poor army fought the onslaught with sabers and lances and ancient guns. Poland collapsed in 1 month. Men, women, children, hundreds were herded into trucks. They destroyed homes and businesses, synagogues in flames. A year after the invasion, they disappeared into a place of utter degradation, the Warsaw Ghetto. Let me tell you about the Jews. A few months after our wedding, Alex took me, a country girl who had never seen the city, to live in Warsaw. Electric trolleys and cafes and grand homes and stores with everything from hats to shoes. Russian caviar surrounded us. We pulled into a quiet alley with wrought iron gas lamps on the corner. Alex knocked on the door of a 3-story house with high windows and beautiful gardens. A small woman with a kind face peered out at us through tiny square eyeglasses. "Mrs. Grushkin, I've come back, just like I promised," Alex announced. I found myself sitting in an elegant room with a grand piano in one corner, beautiful paintings on the walls, a silver menorah, painting of Warsaw's Noizhik synagogue. Jews in Warsaw don't live so badly, I thought. Mr. Grushkin bounded down the stairs, hugging my husband as if it was his long-lost brother. Before we married, Alex had gone to Warsaw, but he never told me of this same man entrusted him to sell fabric from his textile mill. Mr. Grushkin knew he had found someone who wouldn't cheat him. Now Alex needed to help him start his own business. He took us down a narrow cobblestone street with shops nestled against one another's, where he showed us a small store with an apartment above it. "It was ours," he said.
Visual of a yellow Jewish star.
The house stood empty, windows shattered, scrawled with Judean Raus, Jews out. Overnight, Nazis forced Jews from their homes and into the ghetto. Some escaped from behind the walls to fight with the partisans. Others hid in the countryside, or even the city, where a few Poles helped them out. If they were caught for hiding or feeding or even clothing the Jews, the result was instant execution.
Reward for information regarding hidden Jews. Report information to the Office of Jewish Affairs Deutsche Polizei, the commander, Sicherheit Polizei SD Warsaw District.
Life became a never-ending guessing game about which neighbor we could trust. Plenty of takers lined up to help with our occupiers. I couldn't understand why anyone would send the human beings to their death just so they could have a pair of shoes. In our village, we never had any trouble with the Jews. We went to the market, they bought from us, we bought from them. We lived a good life by the banks of the river, surrounded by thick pine forests. We had picnics by the water, and our Jews did the same. Our village had Jewish councilmen and the Jewish school, along with a library and a theater company where all the plays were in Yiddish. There was a dark side. Our priests taught that those people killed our Lord thousands of years ago. They called them perfidious Jews. I mean, I had no idea what perfidious meant, but it must have been awful because the word sounded terrible. When I went to market with Mama and Papa, I saw one of those perfidious Jews in his stall as he repaired shoes. Not Jewish shoes, not Catholic shoes, just shoes. His hands looked worn by time. He was so old. I wondered, could he have been at the crucifixion? With a swift stroke, he pounded the nails into the leather. The thump echoed through my body. I clenched my fists, feeling them pierce the palms of my hands. Maybe he held the hammer, driving the nail into my Lord's hands. looked at him. Kind blue eyes, his wrinkled face, his gray beard. Old Isaac made boots and fixed shoes. This was not a person who could kill anyone. Thank God no one asked me to help these people. I mean, I felt sorry for them, but I had to take care of my own family. I had 2 children to worry about. And on occasion, I fed one of Alex's old friends, Stasik Sokolsky, a braggart and a drunk, who still wore his chauffeur's uniform. The brass buttons had disappeared and it sagged all around his thin body. Before the war, he worked for a Jewish family, but those days were over.
There will be no room in the general government for Jewish exploiters. Jews may not move without a special pass. Jews may not dispose of property, exercise their professions, or benefit from their labor. Jews may no longer have the right to social or medical insurance benefits. They may no longer participate in religious observances or attend normal schools. They no longer have the right to associate freely.
The men in the family Sokolsky worked for made a grave, miscalculated decision as Hitler's war machine invaded Poland in 1939. They fled the city, leaving behind their women and children. After all, Germany, the nation of Bach, Brahms, and Beethoven, would never hurt innocents. I wanted to know what happened to the children of the family Sokolsky worked for. I wanted to know what happened. They were inside the ghetto. Late at night, he threw food for them over the wall. Inside each package, he wrote notes. Remember our picnics in the park? Oh, thinking about the strawberries that we ate in the forest. The drunken braggart had a heart. Sokolsky never stayed in one place for more than one night. One day, Anna made him supper. Another day, Magdalena washed his clothes. Isabella, well, you can guess what she did for him. Out of nowhere, Alex asked Sokolsky to bring one of the Jewish children into our tiny apartment. You want to have us all executed? It's not going to happen. You can play the savior, but I'm the one who has to stay home and keep our children safe. It's not going to happen. We have our own problems. A wild idea, he said. Keep those ideas to yourself. Then Alex tells me that he and Sokolsky have a plan to make money. They're going into the countryside where they can get cigarettes and sell them on the black market. Over my dead body. You're not tramping around the countryside on some cockeyed scheme. Searching through Warsaw for flour or salt is bad enough after I go to bed. It won't be for cigarettes. You'll end up in the basement drinking day-old vodka or homemade Schlisowitz. A miracle. Twice in one day I got my way. Sokolsky ran off to make his make-believe millions without Alex. He didn't talk about this lost opportunity, but every day he spoke about the children in the ghetto. What harm would it be to take in one small boy? He kept asking me. Don't misunderstand. I pitied them, but we all knew what happened to families who harbored Jews. The Nazis forced mothers and fathers to watch their children being executed. After putting them through horrible torture, they hung the parents. Sokolsky never showed up again. No doubt he spent his money on alcohol and women.
A knock on the door.
A tired man who called himself Dr. Vladimir Kowalski insisted on meeting Alex. For the first time, I understood why he roamed the streets of Warsaw after curfew. Alex smuggled guns and ammunition through the secret tunnels to Jewish fighters in the ghetto, all under the noses of the Germans. His real name, Dr. Abraham Galler, uncle of the boys Alex wanted to rescue. Sokolsky told him we could be trusted. Where is the drunk? Dead. He and his friends walked into a trap. A German patrol machine gunned down Sokolsky and everyone with him. What do you want from us? I asked. His nephews, 10-year-old Jacob, 8-year-old Shalom, and 5-year-old David lived with their grandmother and aunts inside the ghetto. He begged us to take one of the boys, Jacob, out. This Kowalski, Galler, whatever his name, he was not going to make me into a hero. Jacob would have to find someone else to help him. He held up a photograph of the young boy. All of a sudden, this boy, he had a face. This victim, this child. He became flesh and blood, someone hiding in fright, living in danger. Turn away from an innocent? Was that a sin? Of course it was a tragedy. On the other hand, I had my own children, Mauricia and Yorick. To place our own family in harm's way meant an enormous sacrifice. Alex believed the rescue would become a great moment in his life. Galler wanted to protect his nephews. I needed answers to a dilemma of life and death. I ran to the church. I couldn't tell the priest about the Jewish child, but I did long for the comfort of a confessional. I prayed for guidance. I prayed for a sign to show me what to do. All I had in my head was a picture of a little frightened boy who needed help. All right. We'll take him into our home. For a week, Alex studied guard timetables at ghetto gates. Germans can always be counted on to stay on schedule. Galler had access to the ghetto as a Polish doctor. Under the noses of the sentries, he managed to provide Jacob's aunts, Devorah and Hanka, the precise 10-minute window to pass the boy into Alex's hands. At precisely 8 in the evening, the guard left for a break. Alex slipped the bar, opening the gate. Hanka handed Jacob to Alex. They quickly walked away. Alex told him his name was no longer Jacob. His nephew, Jenik, lived on a farm in the countryside. Alex told Jacob, "From now on, you are Jenik." Years later, Jacob told us how he felt. My aunt kissed me and handed me over to Alex. He took my hand, like father and son. We walked together to the Roslins' apartment. I panicked the first time that I saw him. My son and daughter have blonde hair and blue eyes. With his curly hair and his brown eyes, forgive me for saying this, Jenik or no Jenik, he looked like a scrawny Jewish boy. He devoured slivers of potato and limp cabbage as if it were a feast. His words came slowly at first, and then they just tumbled out. 7 days a week, boxcars arrived in the ghetto at the railroad platform, the Umschlagplatz. The Germans pretended men, women, and children were going to work on farms. No one came back from those farms. Hundreds entered the ghetto every day, and hundreds left. People starved to death or died of disease or took their own lives. Death became ordinary. So ordinary. How could I protect him? How could I protect my own children?
Sound of hammering.
Alex built a trapdoor in the floorboards of our kitchen pantry, and Jacob scurried under it whenever a friend or a neighbor came over. We warned him, stay away from the windows during the day so he wouldn't be seen. In case anyone spotted him, we said our nephew, Jenik, had come to stay with us. Even though life had changed, some things had stayed the same. Mauricio went to school every day, at least when it was safe to go outside. Jacob waited anxiously for her return. He loved helping Mauricio with her schoolwork, especially mathematics. He had an unbelievable mind for numbers. When we were all together, I knew I did the right thing. It was difficult, but we kept going. My upstairs neighbor worked for a Polish police officer, and she often asked me to take care of Gregory, her 3-year-old son. He played with the pots and pans in the kitchen, and then one day, Jacob peeked out of his hiding place. Gregory leapt into my arms. When his mother returned from work, he cried about the eyes. I explained he must have seen a rat. Every Easter, my younger brother Vladek showed up in Warsaw. Drink? He loved his vodka, and anything else in a bottle labeled 90 proof. I put up with Vladek because he was my brother. Alex put up with him because I put up with him. Vladek and I walked to church on Good Friday. Alex refused to go. Before we married, my mother and father, they insisted he was a pagan. They told me he would go to hell if I married him, and he died. I would be all alone in heaven while the devil roasted Alex along with his evil friends. I wouldn't listen. I had been in love with Alex Roslin since I was a young girl. From the time he was 6 years old, he plowed the fields of his family's farm next to ours. The Roslins rode into our little village once a week where they sold vegetables in the market, just like all the farm families. We never saw them in church. My mother and father and brother attended Mass every Sunday and on all the holidays, including special saints' days. Papa believed that if he prayed, rain would fall and sun would shine and our crops and our livestock would always be healthy. If it didn't work out, he blamed himself, or my brother, or me, or even my mother for committing a sin. I mean, I agreed with Papa. Somebody must have done something wrong. So, I lit candles. I made confession. Although for the life of me, I didn't have much to confess because I had no idea what sin I could have committed to make our milk cow go dry or bring grasshoppers to eat our crops. I went to confession anyway. I liked sitting in that magical closet where mysteriously all my sins were just washed away. Father, forgive me. I made my last confession a week ago. I haven't had time for big sins, only little ones. I teased my brother, Vladek. I hid behind a tree. I watched our neighbor's son plow his field without his shirt. Will I go to hell? Alex and I talked about our dreams. Dreams of having a family. Well, my dream. Alex dreamed of becoming an architect. 3 days a week, he did accounts for a local textile mill. When the owner found out he wanted to be an architect, he arranged for a tutor to help him pass the entry test into Warsaw University. He passed only to learn his father died, leaving his mother to run the farm. A year later, his mother remarried and Alex took the test once more, passing with honors. One more victory turned into disaster. His stepfather was a drunk, crops unharvested, fruit rotting on the trees, farmhouse in ruins. He drove him off and promised his mother to restore the farm and give her the security she deserved. His dream of being an architect faded away. Perhaps it was never meant to be. Who could tell what would happen to him? To us, the builder of cities. A year later, we married in our village church. Alex, the church. Now I knew all things were possible. That was a lifetime ago. On Good Friday, 1942, my brother and I knelt before the statues of saints, draped in purple cloth. German soldiers flipped out of confessionals, worms escaping from infected fruit. Did they have the conscience to tell the priests about murdering innocent men, women, and children? Could a God of peace forgive such terrible sins? Sins ground into their souls forever. I prayed for us, for Alex, for Jacob. Those high arched ceilings, the smell of old wooden pews, glow of gold-veined marble protected me from the troubles of the world. But once outside, I shook with worry. Vladek and I found Jacob and Alex glowing over his accounts. Imagine, a little boy helping a grown man.
Pounding on the door.
Jacob, into the kitchen, the hiding place. Police and Gestapo stormed into our apartment, knocking over tables and chairs. Gregory's mother, the nice, sweet young woman who asked for favors. Do you have extra sugar? A little salt? Please watch my little Gregory for me. She reported us for a carton of cigarettes. Pavel Yavorsky. Pavel, Vladek shouted. The sergeant was an old drinking friend from before the war. Alex pulled out a bottle of vodka he had saved for 3 years, and soon the two friends were drinking and bragging about their conquests and telling stories while Marisa stood guard in front of the pantry and wouldn't budge. They left carrying the vodka with them. Best use of alcohol I've ever seen. Our lives turned upside down because we saved one little boy's life. Vladek couldn't understand why we placed ourselves in danger. Give it to someone else. It's not your business. Not our business. What was our business? I couldn't abandon this child who had become one of my own. After Vladek left, we tore out the inside of our old sofa and hid Jacob inside. We moved from suspicious neighbors to our new home in a small, bombed-out apartment building. It may have been a miserable place, but very few people lived there. Typhoid and scarlet fever raged through the cities. Funerals rolled by our door every day. With disease on one side and fear on the other, Dr. Galler showed up carrying Jacob's sickly, underweight brother Shalom in a backpack. His ribs stuck out. He had legs and arms like toothpicks. It's not going to work. It's hard enough with one Jewish child. But what could I do? Turn away his brother? Alex prowled the city looking for food, bargaining with partisans for weapons, and worked with the Jewish fighting organization. I stayed home, watching, listening. I shook with every step on the stair. I shivered with every knock as a harbinger of death. I didn't want to be a hero. Just wanted to keep the children safe. I would fight with every ounce of energy in my body, that they would survive because I knew one day this nightmare had to end. I swore to myself that the children must never know that I lived in fear. I didn't want to be a hero. My only goal was to keep my children safe. Scarlet fever hit Jurek. We rushed him to the hospital. Shalom, already weak and undernourished from all those months in hiding, came down with typhoid. Even with Abraham Galler working in the hospital, the possibility of being identified as a Jewish child would mean the end to us all. Every day, Jurek split his medicine in half and placed it in an envelope for me to carry home for the hospital for Shalom. He told me he was strong as an ox, and he was getting better. He didn't need all of it. My dreams called to me in familiar places, but I knew when I was small. See the house and the gardens and the wall, all the old familiar faces, longing and forgotten tunes, and the thin string of the balalaika. We buried Shalom, sitting up in a simple wicker basket with his head resting on a pillow. There's a story. Jews are buried sitting up so that when the Messiah opens the doors of heaven, they'll leap into the arms of God. I prayed that God opened his arms and my little Shalom leapt right into them. For days, Jacob was inconsolable. It's as if he never existed, he cried. Rain and snow turned that winter of 1942 into a miserable, weary time of year. The ever-present gray and black uniforms of our occupiers cast a deadly pall over the city. No one had fuel for fire. We sold our furniture, our beds, our quilts, even a few cracked dishes. Jacob contracted a severe ear infection. He cried not to let him die like Shalom. Surgery was the only option. Galler knew a doctor who would do it on a condition that we gave him enough money to bribe the nurses. it wasn't enough. And every day, Jacob's health sank. Without warning, Alex showed up with a stranger and announced he had sold the roof over our head. We had no place to live. But Jacob would have his surgery. A little boy's life rested in our hands. Snow fell while searchlights scanned the stark landscape. For a second time, we bundled Jacob into the hollowed-out sofa. Alex and Jurek trundled it on a wagon to the hospital beneath the searching gaze of the Nazi death squad, rounding up and executing anyone suspected of being a partisan. Broadcasts from England announced the Allies had driven back the enemy. Perhaps this was the beginning of the end. The Germans became more vicious and vindictive than ever. For every one of their soldiers killed by a partisan, they executed 5 Poles, guilty or innocent. Trust disappeared. Friends melted into rubble. Hope vanished. Neighbors twisted into informants. While Jacob remained in the hospital, we moved away from mistrust to anonymity, from a one-room flat in a wreck of a building. Freezing rain dripped from the holes in the ceiling. Blasting icy wind whistled through the cracks. Cold racked our bodies. My children starved. Suspicion, enemies, spies, everywhere stared at the yellow star I wore on my heart. A slow, deadly paralysis overcame me. Where could I go? What could I do? I ran from the flat, ran from the building. I escaped into the night. I ran until my strength drained away and I was left with a hole in my soul that nothing could fill but dread.
Lights down. The stage is a mass of shadows. She runs from one pool of light to another.
No one can live like this. Always afraid. And I wasn't noble, only tired. If I gave myself up to the Germans, pain and shock and terror would vanish. I didn't want to hang. If I threw myself on their mercy, they might have pity on me. I was such an ordinary person.
Rear projection, the ruins of the city.
I stumbled through the brick, among shattered wood benches. It was the old Warsaw synagogue, blown up by Nazis. Somewhere between the light and the shadow, a ball bounced in front of my dark sanctuary. A girl, face red from cold, wearing ragged clothes, held out her hands for the ball. I rolled it to her and she ran off. I slid to the floor where I found a small, tattered book of Psalms in Hebrew and in Polish. The words talked to me. Though I walk through this valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. I returned. Jacob was home. His fever disappeared. Mauricia held his hand. He had one lasting memory of his grandmother. Every Friday night, no matter how miserable their life in the ghetto, she always placed a piece of white bread on the table, even if it was just a crumb. After one of his forays into Warsaw, Alex brought home a treasure, a small roll. Mauricia became so excited she jumped up and down. It had been so long since we had fresh bread. But it was for Jacob, not for her. She screamed and she cried that he got everything, that we cared more for him than we cared for our own children. No, he is ill. We have to help him get better. I think she understood. I hope she forgave us. Easter 1943 brought a miracle. The ghetto rose up against the Nazis.
Sounds of battle.
The Jewish fighting organization, the very people Alex helped with arms and ammunition, fought valiantly.
Sounds of battle escalate.
A month passed, a month of devastation, but a month in which people would not go peacefully to their deaths beneath the guns of oppressors. No one believed Jews, who we Poles always thought were so passive, who walked into the ghetto, onto the trains, without fighting back, had such immense courage. German cannons, tanks, flamethrowers surrounded the ghetto as they were fighting Russians on the Eastern Front. They crushed walls, razed buildings, destroyed everything in sight, taking enormous losses of their own in this revolt of people who decided they would no longer be victims.
Visual. Roundup of Jews.
A little over 30,000 survived out of almost 500,000 Jews hid inside the devastated ghetto. Late one night, after the uprising, Dr. Galler arranged for David's dramatic rescue while the German occupiers tightened the noose around the city. Hanka and Devora led David to a wall where the two men picked him up by arms and legs. On the other side of the wall, a friendly orderly waited. They tossed David over into the orderly's arms. Galler brought him to his brother. A few years ago, David, a prominent professor of probability mathematics, please don't ask me what that means, came to America on a lecture tour. A local school asked him to talk with children about the Holocaust. He told the story of his rescue. They asked him if he was afraid. Better a broken leg than dying in a gas chamber. After a good washing, I discovered that this little boy had blonde hair. Maybe no one would suspect he was Jewish. We gave him a good Polish name, Tadek, little Teddy. We told everyone he was our nephew from the country. It made life a little easier, though Jacob was angry and jealous because he had to keep running into closets or the pantry while David played outside. Alex traveled farther from the flat to find food. Sometimes he didn't return for 2 or 3 days. I made up games for the children. I cooked anything I could get my hands on as long as it filled bellies. That's what counted. Alex's safety was my priority. If he traded on the black market, I worried. If he broke curfew, I worried. But in the end, he always came home until a neighbor brought me horrible news that the Gestapo arrested Alex. They know about the children and will come for us. But it wasn't so. They arrested him for supplying arms to the Jewish fighting organization. His execution was scheduled in 2 weeks. It was completely surreal. I carried clean clothes and food to Alex down a long, dark, damp, stone prison hallway. Through a barred window overlooking the courtyard, I saw prisoners struggling against wires tied to a stake.
Sound of machine gun. Visual. Shadows of bar across scene.
Since the beginning of the war, we had put away the money that Alex earned. Not just any money, American dollars. Bribed the prison warden to release him. Here, 100 American dollars. Let my husband go, because if you don't, when the Russians come, they'll know what you did. They're waiting on the east bank of the river, just outside Warsaw. You know what Russians do to collaborators. I rushed home, just as the door slammed open and a member of the Gestapo and 2 German soldiers demanded to know, where were the Jews? You want Jews? I hid them all over the place. Search! They're inside the walls. They're in the closets. 50, maybe 100. Bayonets ripped through my furniture, gun butts pounded holes in the walls. David clung to my skirt. Mauricia stayed behind me. Yorick tried to look brave. Go ahead! Ruin everything in sight, I yelled. We held our breath when the Gestapo agent ordered his men to stop searching. He examined our papers, even David's forged ones, and looked down at his curly blonde hair. He can almost pass for an Aryan, he laughed. Then they were gone. Our luck held out. If only the bribe to the prison warden worked. It didn't. His execution was 2 days away when, a miracle, church bells rang across Warsaw. Through the barred windows of his cell, Alex watched Germans running for their lives. Partisans opened cell doors, ordering everyone out. Gunshots and machine guns rattled around the streets. Alex, wearing striped prisoner pajamas, came home. Polish partisans drove Nazis back to their camps and their barracks. 10, 50, hundreds of voices singing the Polish national anthem rose up from the avenues and the boulevards and the old squares.
Voices of singing the Polish national anthem.
Men, women, and children rushed into the streets, battling stormtroopers with picks and crowbars and hammers.
Sound, gunfire, bombs.
We huddled around our old radio.
Hello, Warsaw speaking. Today the people of Warsaw rose against their Nazi oppressors. All people everywhere support the courage and determination to make Poland free once more. The armies of the Soviet Union are braced on the outskirts of Warsaw and will be entering at any moment.
Polish flags fluttered down from doors and windows for the first time since the occupation. Partisans and German snipers traded gunfire, but it didn't stop the cheering crowds. Yorick donned his scout uniform, running into the street to join his unit, shouting at the top of his lungs that we had our freedom!
Sniper gunfire.
A red rose blossomed on his jacket. It grew brighter and brighter until the color blinded me. His scoutmates buried him with honors in the old Jewish cemetery, not far from the center of Warsaw. How many tears did I have left? How many heartaches could I endure? I had no time to mourn. I only had time to bury my dead. Screams of men, women, and children systematically murdered increased my grief.
Bombers overhead. Bombs explode.
Day and night, bombers hurled their deadly cargo down on our heads. We crammed into the basement with others trying to flee from death.
Hello, Warsaw speaking. This town's 1 million people is being wiped out. We've given more than we could. We are today the conscience of the world. We were called the inspiration of the fighting nations and the inspiration of the world. We as a nation have a right to live. We demand that right.
We crept out of the city, along with thousands of other refugees.
Lights down. Flashes of lightning. Sound of rain pelting down. Rear projection. Jagged, war-torn city.
Pouring rain turned streets into muddy rivers. Twisted steel and rubble blocked our way. Barbed wire tore at our skin. Day and night, the Germans blasted the city, destroying our last remnant of Warsaw. We slept with hundreds of refugees in irrigation ditches, our bodies frigid from icy water. The freight car rumbled towards us, and we jumped in, burying ourselves under piles of moldering hay. When it reached Kamensk, my brother's small village, we clambered out beneath the black, star-filled sky. The silence close around me until Alex took my hand and lifted me to my feet. Lights flickered in the distance. It was a poor village with only a few huts surrounded by sorry-looking farms. At last, we found Vladek's home. He pleaded with me to put Jacob and David back on the train. I was the only mother they knew. The only one who cared for them, fed them, clothed them. For years, we hid them in the face of danger. Years of agonizing about a knock on the door. It could mean death for us all. I would never give them up. They were as much my children as Mauricia and, God rest his soul, York. Alex laid bricks We built barns. We scraped and we searched for the simplest things, a crust of bread, a beet, a potato, until rumors crawled out from under the rocks. Whispers flew around the village that Alex was, of all things, Jewish. Only the way he could prove he wasn't Jewish, he dropped his pants in front of the town doctor. "Does this look like a Jew to you?" he demanded. The frightened doctor gave him a certificate identifying that he found everything complete on Alex. Another rumor crept from the house. Russians will invade. We heard that before. We saw what happened when people dreamed about deliverance. Then one night, 1,000,000 firecrackers erupted across the whole eastern front.
Sound of howitzers, cannons, gunfire, flashes of light.
A wall of Russian tanks, artillery, trucks, and infantry swept across the Polish frontier and into our little town. Soviet soldiers banged on doors, searching for Germans. A tall, bearded soldier wearing eyeglasses, fierce eyes, burst in, glaring at David. "You're skinny. How about something to eat or drink?" Later, we discovered that he also gave an 8-year-old not only a sausage, but vodka. To stop Alex from berating him, he gave David a book he wrote and autographed it. "Words are stronger than bullets," and signed it Vasily Grossman. He threw his gun over his shoulder and joined his unit. The nightmare ended. In the displaced persons camp in Berlin, we discovered that Jacob and David's father and grandfather had escaped to Palestine. We pleaded with the British to allow us to take the boys to their father. They couldn't understand why 3 Polish Catholics had any desire to go to Palestine. Mauricia and the boys remained in the camp. Alex and I were housed in a German home near the infamous town of Spandau. The children were permitted to visit us, one at a time, leading to an adventure I wish had never happened. On David's turn to join us, a harsh, cold day in December, he fell asleep on the elevated train, ending up in the Russian zone. Afraid to tell anyone he was Jewish, he made up a story that he was an orphan, and the only name he remembered was Vasily, a soldier he met in Kamensk. 2 young Germans turned him over to a Russian garrison. Surprised at the 8-year-old's intelligence, the commandant determined to adopt him. For 3 weeks, David lived with the colonel, who ordered an army tailor to make an officer's uniform for him. Officers taught him how to play chess. He accompanied the commandant when he reviewed the troops. David was overwhelmed. Later, he told us all he wanted was to come back to us, to Jacob, to Mauricia, but feared if the colonel knew he lied, all of us would be in trouble. We placed a notice in the Berlin paper with a reward, the last of the funds that we had saved, for information about David, who had a prominent scar on his forehead and wore a scarf I knitted. The Russian commandant's German housekeeper read the notice and called the camp, informing them the colonel planned to adopt David, Tadek. We rushed to the officer's apartment with a British escort just as the colonel arrived from the garrison. Of course, he asked for the reward. Shortly after, the Jewish agency sent letters and telegrams from us to the boys' grandfather and father, searching for information about them. The British prevented us from taking them to Palestine. The Jewish agency arrived transport to Paris, and then Marseille. From there, they would travel by ship to Haifa. We settled down for what we thought would be a quiet life of retirement in Florida. The town had a large Polish population who immigrated there after the war. The local newspaper ran a story about how we rescued Jacob and David. A friend, a neighbor, a Pole who lived in Warsaw during the war could not fathom why we did it. So what if the Nazis had killed 6 million and 2 Jews? A Jewish real estate developer offered us a home away from bigotry, intolerance, and prejudice, and just as we did in Warsaw, we found a home where we could live in peace. Alex once said, "If our children ask what we did during the war, what will we tell them?" If you were asked the same question, how would you answer?
She removes the wig cleans makeup, dons jacket, faces downstage.
David G. Gutgeld wrote of these painful times. It was a painful process of transition from Tadek back to David. Though this never explicitly came up in our interactions, my brother Jacob must have experienced a similar elusive transition from Genik back to Jacob. Alex and Mela continued calling us Tadek and Genik to the very end of our lives. Mela died in 1996 and Alex in 2005. Deep down, a part of me will inevitably remain Tadek as long as I live. Yad Vashem and the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, Jerusalem, Israel, recognized Alexander Roslin as the righteous among the nations, February 13, 1968. They honored Amelia Roslin as righteous among the nations, January 7, 1981. A garden in their name grows on the Avenue of the Righteous. The Roslin oral history is enshrined in the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, Washington, D.C., and USC Shoah Foundation. David Gutgeld is a professor emeritus at the Probability Mathematics Tel Aviv University. He lectures throughout Europe and in the Western Hemisphere and continues to write professional articles. David lives in Tel Aviv. Jacob Gutgeld is a highly respected physicist, worked at the end of the National Research Center, Sorek, Israel, before retiring. He authored numerous papers on nuclear physics and accomplished groundbreaking research on radioactive medical isotopes at Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, Hayward, California. Jacob also lives in Tel Aviv.
Thank you so much again for coming today. We really hope that this piece resonated with you. Again, thank you to the Rosenstrasse Civil Courage Foundation for sponsoring this reading, to Michael Halperin for allowing us to read this piece, to Jeff and to Sarah for bringing their voices and their talents to bring this piece to life. And thank you to all of you for spending your Sunday with us. And again, if you're interested in Michael Halperin's other works, which also deal with the Roslin family, you can come find me in the back of the room and I can give you a flyer about it. Thanks very much, everybody.